Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer 3 video. Who would have guessed? Well, in this video we're going to look at the Ogre Kingdom's full roster, and the plan is to go over each individual unit, see my personal feelings about them, how I've been using them in campaign and so on, and just discussing mainly. Now there is a lot to discuss because there are quite a few units. The majority of them are variants between themselves, but they all have drastically different uses in the battle and so on, so let's not waste any more time and jump right in. So let's start off with something that isn't an ogre, which is the Noblars. These are your trash tier, your absolute trash tier, but they're very useful units. Keep in mind that this is pretty much a horde that's expendable, they're a meat shield. Yes, they have poor leadership, but they're there just to do, well, Noblar things. Keep them in the front line and pretty much hold down enemy units because that's all they're really good for. Well, these Noblars at the very least. There are ways that you can make them unbreakable, which, again, I don't know why you would want to, but hey, for a cheap unit option, which is pretty much your Skaven slaves, why wouldn't you want to use these? You can recruit them straight off the bat, and sometimes you just want a cheap army to follow your main one around, so yeah, they're not too bad. Noblar Trappers are your last Noblar units, and much better than the standard ones, I have to say. They're a missile hybrid infantry unit, so they can do a little bit of damage on foot, they can do a little bit damage on range, and yeah, little is the big word here. But they do carry around with them a nasty debuff that they can use on the enemy. They're also able to stalk, so you can keep them moving around without being seen. And not only that, but yeah, they vanguard, which is incredibly useful if you're dealing with loads of enemies in different areas. You want to be able to just be able to bog them down. So yeah, I've got to say, if you've got the choice between the standard Noblars or the Trappers, go for the Trappers. Okay, so now we can start moving towards the actual ogres, and we've got this standard ogre balls at the very beginning. These are your lowest tier ogres with, kind of okay armor, but they're damage dealers. They've got Ogre Charge, they've got Wall Breaker. Keep in mind that everything's pretty much got Ogre Charge and Wall Breaker, if they're ogres, of course, the same as Fear, so I won't be repeating that all the time, but for a basic unit, keep in mind that this is your lowest tier ogre once again. They're good. I actually quite enjoy them. I think that they're quite useful. They're able to do a decent amount of damage. They're weak against armor, however, so it very much depends on what you're fighting, though there's a few different variants, so you are able to get quite a few different things out here. They're cheap, and yeah, they might not look so cheap when you start playing, but keep in mind that the rest of the ogre stuff is quite expensive too, especially since, well, your army is mostly monstrous infantry, but there are a few different variants, so let's talk about those too. So another variant of those are the Iron Fist units, which is very much the same. The only difference is a bit more armor, some melee defense, and they're shielded. Yes, the Iron Fist counts as a shield. I'm not too sure why, but this was a thing from the tabletop. Like, it looks like an offensive weapon. I don't think it's a shield, but hey, let's not judge GW for this. I like them. I'm not so keen on them, mainly because I've been using the other variant more, though having a shielded unit is obviously useful because you're going to be dealing against stuff like range units and so on. However, most of your stuff is very durable, you've got a lot of HP, so it very much depends if you want shielded versions or not. The good thing is that there's variety, and the variety is always nice to have. Out of the 3 available variants, I've really liked the dual weapon variant because, you know, anti-infantry, damage dealer, and so on. Especially since this is a very early campaign unit, you just have to increase your settlements a little bit. But if I'm going to go to either Cathay or the Darklands at the very beginning of my campaign, the choice is pretty much there. You're going to be dealing with a lot of infantry, be it Cathayans or Orcs, so anti-infantry does work quite well. They pack a good punch too. They're fast, the Ogre Charge is quite useful. I mean, you can use the Iron Fist at the front to act as a shield, and then these ones to flank, but they're more than capable of just being thrown into the enemy directly and just letting them do their thing. That's how I've been using them at the very least. Next, we'll move on to a rather unique unit. These are the Iron Guts. Now, these were very, very popular on the tabletop, and they're going to be popular here, I'd say too, mainly because they're heavily armored, 90 armor at the beginning. They're armor-piercing damage because they use great weapons too. They can do a lot. I've really liked them just being my front line eventually, just having them at the very, very front and having them just slam into anything they see, just cut down anything. They're really, really good, honestly. I've been surprised. I thought they were going to die out quicker. Obviously, if you're dealing with, say, for example, Cathayans, who have some gunpowder-based weaponry and so on, they will be dying a lot quicker, and obviously anything with anti-large and so on, but that's a bit of an issue that ogres have altogether. But if you're moving and rampaging through the Darklands, moving into then the Empire and so on, the Dwarf territories, or just going to go deal with the demons who have no gunpowder, this is a pretty good unit to take up front. Now, Gorges. Gorges are pretty interesting because they're not really the best and they will die quickly if they're bogged down. However, they've got loads and loads of different uses, mainly because they're armor piercing, they're anti-infantry, they're vanguard deployment, and you can stalk with them too, which is pretty cool. You can even buff up their capabilities with Scrog and so on. So it depends on how you're using them. These can be used without a problem just flanking the enemies, and I think that they're pretty good at that. Like I said, their low armor makes them squishy, but there's always a reason to bring them around. Having Vanguard does really help for flanking stuff. It very much depends on how your playstyle is, because if you're going to be something quite up close and personal, yeah, this works. If you're going for a range-based army, then possibly not, but that's the thing with the Ogres, there is so much capabilities with them. Okay, Saber Tusks, or also known as Battle Kitties, these are pretty interesting. So, they are very fast, almost as fast as Slaneshi chariots, by the way, and they can get a little bit faster too, but unfortunately they can rampage, which can be a bit of an issue. Now, by itself, I'd say you can ignore these. They're not worth it. Yeah, they're cool and they're fast and they're very excellent hunters, but they will get pinned down, they will get destroyed pretty easy. However, I did mention this in the overview for the campaign, if you have hunters, hunters can buff these up and make them truly dangerous. It's funny enough how it worked on the tabletop too, so it's nice to see that translation happening here. I would say, yes, bring at least a unit or two in your army, but make sure you have a hunter and make sure that you're leveling up that hunter. That way your Saber Tusks will actually be useful, they'll be able to do a lot of damage, and you can have them pretty much ripping apart most things. Again, without a hunter, not useful whatsoever, I'd say, though some players might think otherwise. Okay, so we're going to talk about man-eaters. There's a few different variants, but I just want to state one thing here for those who might only know them from Total War, but not know them from the tabletop. The man-eaters worked in a very different sense, that they weren't units, they were more like build your own hero squads, and they had little different abilities and so on. You could tailor them to exactly how you wanted. The translation's not been done the same. Hopefully we get a man-eater hero in the future, or lord, because that would just be nice, but I just wanted to point that out here. Though, with all that being said, first we have the standard man-eaters. These are armor-piercing ogre charge as per usual. These is pretty much just a stronger version of the ogre bulls. That's pretty much the best way I can explain it. They're not great when you compare them, at the very least, but they do have their uses. Obviously, this is just an upgrade, and, you know, good leadership, good damage overall, a bit better armor, but nothing too drastically different. At least that's the best way for me to explain it. They're good units, don't get me wrong, but some of the other variants are a lot better, and I can just say that easily. So there's also the Iron Fist version, which has shielded because of the Iron Fist itself. It's pretty good, but like I would say, if you want an armored unit, get the Iron Guts because, you know, you get a lot more damage output, you have a lot more armor. Sure, they don't have a shield, but yeah, I'd say that the Iron Guts are a lot more better than these. These are still decent, and these can be your front line if you so want one. But you know what I mean, there's a lot of different variety. Why get bogged down with the same thing just with a different coat of paint? Especially since you have man-eaters with ogre pistols. These are better than the two variants we've already spoken about, because yeah, decent armor, 40 isn't too bad, decent movement and all that, but they're a hybrid unit with armor piercing. They've got pistols, they can fire on the move, their range is 140, missile strength is pretty decent too. They don't have a lot of ammo, but the idea is these are firing as you're moving and slamming into the enemy lines. If you want a man-eater, I'd say that these are probably the best. Like, well, out of the three we've discussed so far, these are objectively the best, and it's something that you'll want to have in your armies, just purely to have a bit of a skirmishing unit. Like, if you're going for full range, don't recruit these because you've got lead Vouchers, but you know what I mean. So now we've got access to man-eaters with great weapons, and these are pretty good too. Keep in mind that obviously you want to have some anti-large and armor-piercing and so on. A lot of your stuff is armor-piercing, but not anti-large. The thing is that you're going to be fighting with a lot of other ogre tribes. No matter how your diplomacy works, eventually you'll need to fight them, and it's probably best to take as many as you can, especially if you're doing ogre and ogre. It's a good unit. I haven't been using them too much because, well, I got a lot of lead belches, and when we talk about them, you'll see why. But that's pretty much it. I would say that they are useful, I just haven't seen too much use for them. Okay, lead belchers. So I absolutely love this unit because of a variety of different reasons. See, I used to fear them on the tabletop because they could do a lot of damage, and they can do a lot of damage here too. They don't have a lot of ammo, but they do have 200 range. That is massive range, and they're able to be used in melee combat without too much of an issue. So fire as much as you wish. get rid of your ammunition and bog down the enemy to the point that they're probably not going to be able to do much, and then just slam right into them using the cannons as a hand weapon. Believe me, these are really, really good. They're decently armored too, because I guess the cannon acts as the extra armor. They've got high weapon strength. I'm a big fan. That's all I can say. Like, I am a big fan. I do have an army running around with a doom stack of these, and it's really fun. It is really fun. Okay, so, giants. Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, they're part of the Ogre army book and so on, and they had their uses back then. But in Total War, we've got giants, and they don't really fit here. Don't get me wrong, they fit aesthetically and all that. They're a slave giant, they're armor-piercing, they're anti-infantry, they're causes terror, they're a single entity, but you've got better stuff than this. Like, I'll be very honest with you, I've not seen a single reason to recruit a giant in-game. The Iron Blaster is something truly special, one of your artillery pieces, but the Ogre artillery is very, very different because you can also use it as a melee unit. So it's got a massive range of 380, and it has a massive amount of missile weapon strength, so you can do a lot of damage, but this is a cannon that you shouldn't worry about. You can use it in the front line after you've spent all your ammunition, or if the enemy's getting too close, slam it into the enemy. It's being pulled by a Rhinox, and the Rhinox is there to do damage, so you're perfectly fine just doing damage. It's great. I must say, these are fantastic. They're very, very useful. The cannons were probably a bit better in the tabletop because they were just designed that way. Here, they're just like a standard cannon in a sense and so on, but it can do a lot of damage, so I'm not saying anything bad about it. You're going to want these in your army, definitely. The scrap launcher is pretty much in the same boat. While it does not have as good missile strength, it does have a lot more range at 420, nice, and it's anti-infantry. It's pretty much a grudge thrower, but imagine if the grudge thrower was pulled by a Rhinox. It's able to do a lot of damage up front, it's got a lot of armor, like even just playing through the Ogre Kingdoms and so on, I can tell you with 100% honesty, there is nothing bad I can say about either of the artillery pieces. They're both great, they both have different uses, so obviously the Iron Blaster is good for single targets and so on, whilst the Scrap Launcher is great for hordes. And you're going to be dealing with a lot of hordes. There's going to be a lot of demons. Eventually, we're going to have to deal with more Skaven and so on. So, yeah, recruit them. They're great. And Stonehorns are the reason why you don't need giants in your army, because these are massive single entities, armored, armor-piercing, collision attacks, anti-infantry, like very heavily armored, 110. They're able to do a lot of damage. They are just so much more better than the standard giant because they can move around quicker, they can do a lot of damage, they're just really cool, they're absolutely intimidating too. I remember seeing these on the tabletop going, wow, I have to buy these and paint them, and now they've got that impression on me here too. They're just really, really awesome. There are two variants of the Stonehorn. You've already seen the first and this is the second, which has a harpoon launcher mounted on it, which has 250 range, 22 ammunition, a decent missile strength. This is essentially a very mobile bolt thrower that's able to do a lot of damage in melee too. So yeah, I mean, this is going to take a while before you can actually recruit these, so go for the standard one if you can, or if you want to wait, it's fine. Both of them work out quite well. I've not been able to try a full doom stack of these because they're fairly expensive in terms of upkeep and so on, but it would be something special, I imagine. Like, I've got two in my army at the moment, just two basic ones and a hunter mounted on one too, so technically 3, and yeah, they're pretty good, This is the only reason you'd want to use that healing spell on to keep these alive, but even then, it's still overcosted. That's in the magic video that you'll see soon enough. So, moving on to cavalry, and funny enough, there is a lot of cavalry. We've got the Mournfang. These were disgusting on the tabletop and remain so here too. Heavily armored, very, very fast, 75 speed. They're pretty good at catching up to a lot of stuff. They've also got armor-piercing damage. Mournfang come in a few different variants too. This is a standard one with standard weapons. Even just this, with just one hand weapon, they're able to rip apart so much stuff, it's unbelievable. I just really like them. This is the second variant, which is the one with the Iron Fist. This is very much the same, just with a bit more armor and shielded. It depends on what you want. I say that the standard one is perfectly fine on how it works, though if you want a bit more armor, if you're going to be dealing with maybe a lot of stuff with range, the shielded variant will be probably the best. Next is the Mournfang with great weapons, which, yeah, they are quite good. It makes them anti-large, armor-piercing, armored. I possibly use these more It really depends, because obviously there is a stronger tier coming up soon, but these have been quite useful too. It very much depends on what you want from your cavalry builds, and you can go full cavalry build, barring your leaders. Unfortunately, they don't have any mount options, but yeah, you can make something pretty terrifying. And they do hit hard, they look cool too. Cool factor is a big thing. Going into the higher tier here, we're going for the Crushers, which is an Iron Gut mounted upon a Rhinox instead of a Mournfang. This was pretty much a... If I remember correctly, this was a Forge World thing, but it was super rare. And yeah, they're heavily armored, 130. They're shielded. They do a bit more damage because Rhinoxes are a bit more to do there. They're just as fast as the Mournfang too, which is surprising. I would have made them a bit slower just to kind of balance them out. But yeah, these are really good. I like them. I really like them. Again, cavalry focus, but heavy cav, and I mean really heavy cav. So it depends on what you want from them, but they're able to do a lot. Going into the higher tier here, we're going for the Crushers, which is an Iron Gut mounted upon a Rhinox instead of a Mournfang. This was pretty much a... If I remember correctly, this was a Forge World thing, but it was super rare. And yeah, they're heavily armored, 130. They're shielded. They do a bit more damage because Rhinoxes are a bit more to do there. They're just as fast as the Mournfang too, which is surprising. I would have made them a bit slower just to kind of balance them out. But yeah, these are really good. I like them. I really like them. Again, cavalry focus, but heavy cav, and I mean really heavy cav. So it depends on what you want from them, but they're able to do a lot. So now we look towards the generic hero choices. We have the Hunter. Now, I really like the Hunters because not only can you have them mounted, but they're also ranged too. So they're pretty multi-purpose. They're armor piercing, anti-large. They've got Ogre charge, decent melee combatants. They've got a few abilities too that they can unlock through skills, and they can also boost up your Saber Tusks, which I said earlier in this video. They're multi-purpose, they were really good on the tabletop, I like them here too. The only thing is, I would have loved if we had different mount options. On the tabletop, they could only really mount on this, right? The Stonehorn, which the Stonehorn is great, don't get me wrong, but it would be nice if they also had the option of mounting either a Rhinox or a Mournfang too, as there are really no mount options. But other than that, like, I cannot fault this hero, especially with making the Saber Tusk so powerful. I'd say that this is really well worth it. Firebellies are also pretty cool, as they're another generic hero choice that have flaming attacks. The great thing is, you can see they've got access to the Lore of Fire, and they have a lot of fire-based abilities too, which makes them very dangerous. The Lore of Fire is also one of those popular lores. They were very popular in the tabletop because they had access to this lore too. And it gives you some variety, because you don't have a lot of lores right now as the Ogre Kingdoms. It's a bit of a shame. You only have Beasts, Gut Magic, and this one. So having this one does help to more flavorize the army a little bit, especially since you've got a army which is very focused around loads of different variants and so on. So having something truly unique is a nice push. Butchers are your generic spellcasters with either the Lore of the Great Maw, which is Gut Magic, or the Lore of Beasts. It very much depends on what you want. Both lores are quite good, though Gut Magic is better. However, it's kind of overcosted, so it's trying to find the thin line in a sense. Magic is still very important even for the ogres, so you will need to either bring one of these or a Firebelly. Unfortunately, no mount option for both, which does make them a little slow depending on what type of army you're bringing, though they can move around, and they have no problem being in the front line. The great thing is that the Butchers are able to do a decent amount of damage, which is a great thing. You can have them there surrounded by Iron Guts or whatever and just smash down the enemy. The same goes for the Slaughtermaster. It's good at what it does. It's a spellcaster. It's your lord choice. I am using them quite often, to be honest. They do a lot of damage. They're shielded too because they've got an Iron Fist, which is very useful, I have to say. I might be wrong, but I do think that this is one of the very few spellcasters that we get that are shielded, which, yeah, it's surprising. But I'd say, you know, spellcasters leading armies are always usually very popular. It really depends on your playstyle, obviously, if you're role-playing or not. I would say that they're cool, and yeah, it's just a shame that no mount option. A mount option overall would be kind of nice. Like, they're ogres, they don't really have a lot. It would just be kind of nice to have, like, something. And now we're at the tail end here with the Tyrant, which surprisingly, I'm using quite a bit. Despite the fact that we have access to spellcasters without a problem, the Tyrant can dish the pain. It's there to do damage, it's heavily armored. I've got a nice, like, kind of blender list of Iron Guts, a Tyrant, a few spellcasters as heroes, and then Mournfang Cavalry, and it works out quite well. I am a big fan, I'm a very big fan. It's one of the few times where I'd say, yeah, bring the Melee Lord, it's fine. which, yeah, obviously works differently when you look towards, like, multiplayer and so on. But usually in campaign, you just want the spellcaster, whereas, yeah, it's good. It's surprisingly really good. I would have loved if it could have a Crusher mount, though, or a Mournfang mount, just because it would be kind of cool. It would be thematic to have, like, just a really massively fat Bretonnian build, in a sense. But hey, I think it's okay. With all that being said, that's pretty much everything. That's all the ogres. It's not a big list. It is, but that's a lot of variants. Obviously, there's some spaces left out and so on. We know that they're pretty much going to do a ogre DLC in the future, which I'd say is perfectly fine. I am quite keen to see how this all goes in the future. The ogres are in a very good place. I can say that now. Like, they are in a very, very good place. Campaign-wise, they're quite fun to play. Their army is quite varied, despite the fact that it's not really varied with unique stuff, but yeah, it's really, really cool. I think the roster is very, very fun. It could do with a bit more, like I said, but in general, yeah, you're not going to have any problems. You've got pretty much anything that you need. I would love to see some mount options, though. That's literally my only complaint. Some mount options would be nice. But what do you think about the Ogre Kingdoms roster? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion, as I think this was the second video of today. There's a lot coming out today, and then there's a stream and so much. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games, where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Ogre for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel has been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.